Hello and welcome to Press TV's special coverage of Egypt's upcoming presidential election. I'm Kavit Hafwai. One day before the vote, just one day before Egyptians find out who's going to save their country, unless there's a runoff, which many predicting there will be, that one candidate will not win 50% of the vote. In that case, the runoff vote will then take place on June 16 and 17, and we'll be there to cover that for you. First, these are some of the top stories coming out of Egypt. More than 50 million Egyptians are heading to the polls to cast their ballots in the historic presidential vote after the fall of pro-West Mubarak. The junta deploys 200,000 troops with armored vehicles to guard the polling stations and to secure smooth voting during the 2 days of election. A new opinion poll by the Cabinet's Information Center shows that 80% of Egyptians will take part in the vote, while 44% believe it will be fair. The Union of Revolutionary Youth starts a campaign of Egypt monitors to observe the election process in 16 provinces and to file any violations. And finally, authorities are allowing observers of the vote to start their work. Monitoring groups say it's too late for them to draw a full picture of the contest. So, is Egypt ready, with a country to have never experienced a presidential election? The Mubarak ones don't count. Are they ready to take in almost 50 million eligible voters? Let's take a look at the wall, as usual, for some stats on this. Here are some of the major points in terms of the polling stations. The date, May 23rd and 24th, coming up tomorrow and the next day. Looking at how many people are eligible to vote, a little over 50 and a half million people who are going to be coming out, a huge number for this country. Looking at a little over 9,000 polling centers that are going to be orchestrated for the people to have come for this vote. Amongst the people who are going to be monitoring the vote are these judges who are key, 14,509. Vote counting will begin after the polls close on the 24th of May, with representatives of candidates and media in attendance. And in terms of when it's going to end, it's on May 26th for the vote counting, and the results will then be announced on May the 29th. Don't forget also, as we just read in some of the news coming out of Egypt, youth groups will be monitoring the judges. So those are the important points regarding the polling stations, regarding the numbers in terms of what Egyptians are going to be experiencing. So in terms of this, we're going to right now try to get an idea of what slogans and also what logos the presidential candidates have chosen, and what better place than to get a view of that from Egyptians on the streets.
والله أنا بتمنى الدكتور عبد المنعم أبو الفتوح هو الرئيس القادم اللي جاي إن شاء الله.
إجبار شديد، الشعب المصري فاهم وواعي. النهارده إحنا عايزين واحد ياخد بإيد مصر. عايزين واحد ياخد بإيد مصر، يقوم مصر لفوق.
أنا من وجهة نظري أفضل رئيس هو عبد المنعم أبو الفتوح. وليه؟ لأني ببساطة شديدة لا يمكن إني أول حاجة يعني لا يمكن أن أنا أنتخب فلول أو شخص ينتمي للنظام السابق، ولا يمكن إني أنتخب رئيس تاني. فبالتالي يتبقى عندي اختيارين، يا اما حمدين صباح يا اما ابو الفتوح. ارى اراء ابو الفتوح وسطيه اكثر وافضل من حمدين صباحي في حاجات كتير.
اهم شيء ان ما يكونش فيه خناقات، ما يكونش فيه دم، ما يكونش فيه حروب، ما يكونش فيه بلطجيه، ما يكونش فيه حاجات زي كده. المهم شيء الراي يكون سليم.
ابو الفتوح انا اولا مستريح له، بعدين تحسه واحد من الشعب، وبعدين لم من الاحزاب كلها حواليه، لا من الليبراليين، الاسلاميين، السلفيين، في من الاخوان، كل حاجه.
هو نهضه مصر عامه احلى شعار. ليه؟ النهضه اساسا بتمثل الشعار العام اللي هو من اول مواطن موظف لاقل لاعلى، طبعا بتبقى درجات.
Well, those are the views of Egyptians. Let's turn now to our correspondent Mohammed Shalabi from Egypt's capital, Cairo, in order to get an update about what is going to be going on regarding this vote. Well, Mohammed, tell us, I would think that obviously one of the items high on the list right now are going to be these polling stations the monitors, the judges, and of course the security. We understand the junta has provided 200,000 troops to actually ensure the safety of the voters.
Well, Kaveh, as you can imagine, the atmosphere here in Egypt is somehow feverish, electric, it's jittery, it's nerve-wracking. Egyptians have been waiting for this for long to have a free choice, and as the hours, we're only hours from the elections now, and as the time passes by, I'll tell you that you get some stomach aching, some excitement as well. Here. What we will be looking at here in this report is how the main candidates chose to portray themselves. I mean, we have a scale, we have a horse, we have a sun, a hawk, and also a ladder. Those were the chosen symbols or signs by the 5 prominent candidates in Egypt's presidential race. So we want to take a closer look now at how these candidates portrayed themselves and how they saw themselves, and whether this view will be accepted by the voters. Of course, we will all know about that view very soon after Wednesday and Thursday, and when the results will be announced the next week in what is Egypt's first free choice, or at least what they hope will be their first free choice without intervention from anybody in their modern history. Let's watch.
The Muslim Brotherhood's Mohammed Morsi chose the scale sign, the same as that of the MB's Freedom and Justice Party, which succeeded in getting nearly half parliament seats in the winter elections. It represents a symbol of justice and fair opportunities and treatment for all. The Brotherhood, which executed relentless social efforts for decades with the aim of lifting the suffering of the tens of millions of Egyptians, probably want to convey a message to society at large that if they did it during the stranglehold of the era of Mubarak, they can obviously do much better in the era of freedom.
The scale sign is a message that state can't be built without justice.
The Brotherhood's former member, Abdulmonem Abul-Futuh, has opted for the horse, which signifies nobleness, beauty, strength, and freedom. The independent portrays himself as an Islamic liberal and has been campaigning on unification, tolerance, dignity, and despite all obstacles, a hard clampdown on corruption in all fields, including security, judiciary, media, and business. The brave horse has naturally attracted a vast number of youth.
All symbols were carefully chosen, and each candidate had a message to the people.
Internationally renowned diplomatic figure Amr Moussa went for the sun. Moussa aimed at convincing voters that he is the one that can lift the fog and bring bright days ahead for Egypt with his rich experience. He also chose a sign that no one can do without in what could be an insinuation that he's a must choice, unlike the rest of the field. The sun cures many diseases, but it also burns and can't shine all the time. Socialist Hamdeen Sabahi picked the hawk in an apparent attempt to revive nationalism and play the game of emotions, since the hawk is a symbol of the Egyptian flag. Sabahi, who uses the word equality in every other sentence, has portrayed himself as the leader of the poor in Egypt, which represents more than half of the 85 million. Lastly, former high-ranking military figure Ahmed Shafiq, Mubarak's last prime minister, seemingly wanted to climb the ladder from way down after falling at the hands of the revolution. Ironically, the ladder needs real balance, which Shafiq might not possess, and looks more like that of fire trucks, which might be needed in full capacity in Egypt if Shafiq inherits his ousted friends. Egyptians need a just scale to regain long-lost justice, a powerful, elegant horse to lead them through freedom, a rising sun to capitalize on hope, a watchful hawk to set priorities and arrange them, and a ladder to climb into the future. 51 million Egyptians will choose their preferred man on Wednesday, on Thursday, hoping that the interim ruling military council will respect their choice. Mohammed Shalabi, Press TV, Cairo.
Well, let me introduce our guest for this in-depth look of the upcoming presidential election. Mounir Hamza, who's a writer and political analyst, joins us from Egypt's capital, Cairo. And we have from London, Ali Al-Kabani, who's a journalist and writer. Gentlemen, welcome. Mounir Hamza, let me first go to you. It is said that farmers and others living in rural areas represent nearly 60% of the population. Are they the main voting power, or is it the youth, who, it's said, 2/3 are below the age of 30?
If this asking is questions for me, I think it depends on who is motivating who. In other words, the youth seems to be more motivated these days than the rural areas. The rural areas are maybe more under the influence of, I would say, parties, not necessarily individuals. I mean individual candidates. Whereas the youth are more motivated by ideals that can be very much configured by individual candidates.
Ali Al-Kabani, let's look at, for example, the farmers. In your opinion, who represents them the best? Two platforms. Futu has said that he's going to restrict all forms of monopoly, like in wheat. Morsi has said he's going to increase subsidies for farmers with interest-free loans to be included.
You know, I hear a lot about the uneducated or the ignorant people in Egypt representing 60% of the population. We have to realize that these are the masters, these are the clients, these are the people whom any president will be appointed to serve them. And those people, non-education doesn't mean that they don't know their interests and they don't know who is the best for them. So I don't like all the analysts who take this section of the Egyptian people lightly, because I prefer those people who know their interest more than the intelligentsia in the capital who just talk and they are really living in separation from the Egyptian people. So this is a day for celebration for all the Egyptians. It is the first time in the history of Egypt they have a chance to have a free and fair election to elect a president. So whoever the Egyptian people will elect in this election, I would support him as the first president of Egypt in this newly born democracy. And of course, once the Egyptian people put their feet on the right step and the first step, then they will progress naturally and normally in democracy. So we have to know that democracy is not an electric switch. We can press it to move from dictatorship to a democratic life. It's a process which we have to build over years and over decades, and we have to re-educate our children on the democratic behavior to create a nation which will reject a dictator in the future, and no one person can come and claim himself to be the autocratic dictator of the country.
Right. Well, Mounir Hamza, at the same time, let me bring Mounir Hamza in. Mounir Hamza, we're looking at, a little over a year since the revolution. What do you think is going to be the #1 priority for the president when he becomes and takes over that post? Egyptians, I don't think, have that much patience left. After all, $2 a day, 50% of the population is said to be how much they make.
Yes, I think the first thing he has to do is know the prerogatives of his own job. He doesn't have a constitution that tells him if he's running into a presidential state or running into a parliamentary state. That's ABC. If Egypt is going to stay as it is, by the way, presidential state, then he's going to have powers to do whatever he wants to do. But then again, if Egypt is going to shift into either a semi-state, in other words, semi between parliamentary state and presidential state, or a totally parliamentary state, then the president will not have so much power to do anything, by the way. And it will remain in the hands of the parliament to choose the government and to run almost the whole show.
Well, when we look at Ali Al-Kabani, not to get into the economics of it, right now the country has about $18 billion in reserves. And let's look at this Islamist parliament that's right now in control. They have rejected, for example, Egypt's World Bank loan of $250 million. The World Bank, that is wanted to lend them $250 million. They said that interest payments on borrowing are forbidden by Islam. Do you agree with that approach in terms of Islamic banking and this being against Islam, not accepting a loan by the World Bank?
The issue of actually the interest and is it against Islam or no is arguable. And I don't think now the situation, the economic situation in Egypt, allow this exercise to decide is it allowed or not allowed.
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood says, I'm sorry to jump in, the Muslim Brotherhood says the road to hell is through development loans. That's their words. The road to hell is through these loans.
No, but actually the Muslim Brotherhood should actually live in the century we are living in now, and they should know there is difference between riba and interest. If we take money to build the economy of the country, then the people who are giving money have to share in the profits, which will be the result of this project which will be built. So to lend money to an individual and use his need at the time of poverty and or starvation, that is riba, which is not allowed in any religion. But a business deal by giving a country a capital to use it to build project for the welfare of its society, then you have to share the profit of these projects with others. But anyway, if the Muslim Brotherhood do not want to have loans, which I agree, not from an Islamic point of view, that it is not allowed, I believe it's allowed, but also loan cripple the economy of a country sometimes. So we have to know that whatever money is borrowed is used in project which will generate money and benefit the Egyptian people. So in this way, loans are good.
Okay.
So you do not borrow
Mounir Hamza,
just to pay salaries for civil servants or
based on what Ali Al-Qabani is saying, should the government be immediately involved in? Looking at some of the horrible pictures coming from some of the slums that exist, not only on the outskirts of Cairo, but also within Cairo, it's quite incredible that people are living in those types of conditions. Is housing going to be one of those projects maybe?
Yes, you're right, and I think one of the leading actors in Egypt was involved into something like this. He was collecting money for the poor neighborhoods in Egypt. Of course, that is actually the job of the government. It should have done so many years ago. It hasn't. It is on the list of priorities. You're right. I think we have so many priorities that we have to tackle. Again, I repeat, it has to do with the prerogatives of the president. If his hands are tight, he won't be able to do much. He has to have the liberty to do whatever he wants to do without having his hands tight. And it all depends on whatever is going to be stipulated in the Constitution.
Okay, let's put that aside, though, Mounir Hamza. Let's put that aside. Tell us, in terms of any of the candidates and, of course, their advisors, who's going to help, for example, with the housing? Looking here, Fatua says increase resources for a slum development project. Musa also saying provide decent housing. I mean, do you think they're going to follow through? Or a platform that they've introduced, have you seen credibility behind the introduction of some of these ideas, such as this one with these two candidates on the housing?
Well,
it is not the job of the president.
No, this is from Mounir Hamza. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mounir Hamza.
Yes, if Musa has the international stature, which I think he does, he will be able, if ever he wants to finance projects in the very, I would say, poor neighborhoods of Egypt, he will be able to probably provide the money necessary for this. And that, I think, will be important to bring about a climate of stability in Egypt, which probably is going to entail, as a result, investors, companies and states that are going to invest in Egypt and help finance all these projects. One of them, of course, being subsidizing or putting some money for the help of developing all these slums.
Ali Al-Qabani, at the same time, we're looking at the foreign policy side. And, of course, we've had the candidates use the issue with Israel and, of course, the importance of Palestine. Morsi saying Camp David Treaty has to be revised. Sabahi, Egypt not dependent on the U.S. And Futu, more graphic, Israel a racist state, enemy, 1979 treaty is a national threat. Do you think they're going to act on that, especially on the Palestinian issue?
They will have to act on that because part of the aims and goals of the Egyptian revolution it is to get back their sovereignty.
But when will
and
they act on
regain their freedom? They will have to act on it because if they don't act on it, the Egyptian people will reject them.
But
the
what,
Egyptian
a
people
month,
rejected
90 days,
the
a year,
regime.
Or as soon as they come into power? How fast is what I'm trying to get at?
I don't think the timing is important once you have the goal set that you have to get rid of it. But we are talking about Camp David. Camp David Treaty is dead and buried because it fulfilled its goals and targets, and it had been violated by the Israeli part. So if the Israeli themselves violated this treaty, why Egypt will respect it and keep it? We have to know that this
let me bring in Mounir Hamza to get a reaction from him. Mounir Hamza, same question to you on Israel, on the Camp David Treaty, and the issue of Palestinians. How fast?
For this, I think, very fast, I think. And I think in this case, maybe Amr Moussa will be the ideal candidate. I remind you that in 2000, I think it was in September 2000, he had a round table with Charlie Rose, and there was Shlomo Ben Ami who was sitting at this round table. And it is one of the pillars of Amr Moussa's getting this very high popularity that he got in Egypt because he came out on top of this round table with Charlie Rose. And he started even earlier to carry on an idea that was, I would say, nationalist and pro-Palestinian. And maybe it's one of the reasons why, by the way, he was evicted from his post as a foreign minister all the way to the Arab League.
Ali Al-Kabani, do you agree in 30 seconds or less, Amr Moussa being the one that's going to enact on it?
I agree with your speaker in Cairo in everything except his support for Amr Moussa, because I don't think any remnant of the old corrupt and rotten regime should have a place in the new political life in Egypt. But I respect the choice of the Egyptian people, but I know for a fact that they will never choose someone of the remnants which they rebelled against, and they made their uprising to get rid of them.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to leave it there. Ali Al-Kabani, many thanks, journalist and writer there from London. And Mounir Hamza, writer and political analyst from Cairo, thank you so much. And of course, thank you for this up-close look at the upcoming presidential election in Egypt. Any questions or comments, do send them at newsroom@presstv.ir. From me, Kaveh Tagwai, and the entire team, it's goodbye.